Good Tuesday afternoon, everybody. Bienvenue on Chat with Kat. Happy Tuesday to everybody. Thank you for tuning in to the show. I hope you guys had an amazing holiday weekend. Some of us worked, some of us didn't work, but I'm glad that we are here together for the next 24 minutes. So again, welcome to Chat with Kat. So I wanted to give you guys a reminder of the down payment assistance program that I told you about last week. It's called the Florida Hometown Heroes Housing Program. Now, this program is simply designed for those who serve in the front line. So if you are a police officer, if you are a nurse, if you are in the military, in the Army, the Navy, the Coast Guard, any of the military branches, if you are a teacher, an educator, any of those individuals, you guys are eligible, for the Hometown Assistance Program. Again, this program started last week, Monday, and the government gave $100 million just for down payment assistance for this year. And also the qualifications again for this program is you must have a 640 credit score. You must be a first-time home buyer, so this has to be your first time, not your second time, not your third time. This has to be your first time purchasing a home. Also, your income limit has to be for Dade County has to be $154,800. That's the maximum cap on your income. This is good for FHA loans, which is a government loan, VA loans. Those are loans for those who serve in the military. USDA loans, those are for rural areas that haven't been built up yet. And also this is great for conventional loans. So if you are interested in knowing more about this program, please call me at 786-253-0211. Again, that's 786-253-0211 if you would like to know more information about this loan. Now, moving on. So last week there was a little video I saw on Instagram when they were talking about tiny homes or tikai. What is a tiny home? Tiny homes are considered anything that's between 100 square feet to 400 square feet. Yes, I know that's little, but that's a thing. So because of the cost of housing, people are looking for alternatives to find something to live, somewhere to live, because for some people they feel that the cost is too much, it's too high, it's too low. So Walmart, like any other, in true fashion, they are capitalizing off of this market where they're selling tikais or glorified sheds. So they have sheds that are two stories. They have sheds that are lofts. They have sheds that range anywhere from 100 square feet to 400 square feet, and in some cases 700 square feet. These tiny homes range anywhere from $4,300 to just under $26,000. However, there are regulations, there are laws that dictate whether or not you can or cannot have a tiny home. So since we are in Florida, I'm going to tell you what the regulations are in the state of Florida, not just Miami-Dade and Broward County, because we do have listeners outside of the Tri-County, so this information is for you. So like I mentioned, the tiny homes, they're about 100 to 400 square feet. They are 18 feet long by 13 feet tall. And these houses, again, the average cost for a tiny home or a tikai is about $9,100. So first things first, you want to consider when you are in the market of getting a tiny home, you just can't buy it and put it in your backyard. There are zoning laws that regulate whether you can, which counties you can put them in. There are some counties that are friendly to tikais, and there are some counties that don't. They make it very hard with lots of restrictions to discourage people from getting the little houses. Now, some counties in Florida are, like I said, more accommodating. Counties like Hamilton County, they allow tiny houses as long as they're 100 square feet. And you cannot put it can't be on wheels, like mobile homes. They have to be on like a permanent foundation, just like your house that you're living in or a condo. your house is not on wheels, right? So you have to treat the tiny home just like a traditional house and put it on a solid foundation that is not movable, because once you put it on wheels, it's now considered a mobile home, and in some counties they will forbid it, and they will actually fine you daily until you remove that tiny home that's on wheels. So again, your property, your tiny home property will need to be in a permanent foundation in order to abide by the zoning. Counties like Dixie and Suwannee, they require such, they require that. The next one is you have to have a minimum square footage. So far as I looked, the minimum has been 100 square feet. And again, each county is different, but so far some of the counties that I looked up, like Pasco and St. Petersburg, their minimum requirement is 100 square feet. It cannot be 80 square feet. It must be 100, and then you can go up to like 400 or 700 if you like. The next thing is permits. You cannot just get a tiny home and not have permits. Just as you are adding an addition to your house, you have to have a permit to put a tiny kai in your in whichever area that you're zoned for. So with the permits, you have to actually know exactly what areas that are zoned for the tiny kai. You can't just get it in North Miami or in Lauderhill. You have to find out which areas are zoned for it. And then secondly, once you find out, you have to apply for a permit from whichever city or municipality that allows for you to do that. And then once you have that, you can go ahead and start building the foundation and assembling your tiny house on top of the foundation, the permanent foundation. Another thing to consider, like places like Orlando and Tampa, some places like those cities, they are more welcoming to tiny homes, that they actually have communities just for tiny homes, so you don't have to go through the stress and hassle of finding an area that's actually zoned for tiny homes. So just to remember, again, that when you're considering buying a tiny home, you must make sure that the zoning laws, you have to find out what are the regulations for whichever county that you're going to move into with your tiny home. You also have to consider the foundational structure, meaning you need a permanent foundation. You cannot put the tiny home on wheels like a mobile home, because now it will not be considered a tiny home. It will be considered as a mobile home. Next up is you need to factor in the minimum size. If you're going to buy a tiny home, it has to be a minimum of 100 square feet. And then also you have to get permitting from the city in which you're going to install the tiny home on the foundation. And then if you're not with it in trying to find what cities, what counties, Orlando has a community that's called Orlando Lakefront Community, and Tampa Bay Village are open their arms and welcome you for your tiny home. So now you're probably wondering, okay, well, what about in Broward County and Dade County? As of course, those two counties are strict. Broward being the most strict between the two. Broward County, the tiny homes are not really accepted with open arms. They have regulations that require the tiny home to be in designated areas or in specific areas. So again, like I mentioned to you, if you are interested, you actually have to find out those specific areas. For more information on that, you can call me at 786-253-0211. That's 786-253-0211. Also, some in Broward County, they will have you put your tiny home in an RV park. So those are like parks that have those Gua machine that are called recreational vehicles. That's the big, bus, kind of like a bus that has a bedroom and a bathroom and a kitchen inside. And those parks, there's one by TY Park that's considered a RV park. And so those type of places, that's where they would have you put your tiny home. So next to an RV where you would have it, where you would be allowed to place it. In Miami-Dade, they're a little bit lenient than Broward County. However, if you're going to have a tiny home, you have to have the same building codes just as if you were buying a traditional house. So that's why a lot of people, they turn away from the tiny home idea and say, I just might as well get a house if they're going to make me go through all this mise. Now, if you're going to get a tiny home, it has to have connections for the utilities like your water, your electricity. So you now have to bring in someone for plumbing. If you're going to have a tiny home, you have to actually have an electrician to add electricity to the home. You can't, I guess they're trying to, if you're going to do solar, you can still do solar, but you still have to have electricity as a backup just in case, something should happen. And then also your water piping. Another thing that they want you to have is, again, you're not allowed to have homes on wheels, just like a mobile. It actually has to be on a permanent foundation. Otherwise, they're going to make you put it in a mobile home. And then another thing is you cannot have the house connected to another house, like kind of like an efficiency. It has to be freestanding on its own and not connected to a house. So that's the thing about tiny homes in Miami-Dade and Broward County. If you should have any questions and you'd like to talk more about your options or explore that, I'm available at 786-253-0211, and I can help you to understand more about tiny homes and help you with the zoning and the laws and the permitting and things like that. So we're going to take a little pause and hear a little music, and we'll be back with our next topic. You're listening to Chat with Kat.
Nou menm pa haïtien, le nou fin grandi ti moun nou yo, nou ba yo edukasyon, yo jwen bon job, yo vin fonde fami yo. Ki sa ki ka arrive nan vie jou yo? Ti moun nou yo a paye bil pa yo, petit yo pral l'école, esko deja prepare anterman ou? Pa kite ti moun nou yo nan problem, rele Kathleen Barreau nan 786-253-0211 pou ka edo prepare zafè anterman ou. Pa kite petit ou yo ap chèche l'ajan nan mes ami, rele Kathleen Barreau nan 786-253-0211 786-253-0211.
Each day, the cost of living is increasing. It is the same as funeral and cemetery costs. Pre-plan your arrangements today and save your family the stress of finding the money later. Finance your plan up to 7 years with low down payments and affordable monthly payments. To set up your appointment, call Kathleen Barreau at 786-253-0211. 786-253-0211. Welcome back, guys, to Chat with Kat. It's 6:20, and now we're coming to the last leg of our show. So as you heard in the commercial, I work for Caballero Rivero. That's a cemetery and funeral company, and many of you guys have supported us in having your funeral services at our chapels, and also, most importantly, having your loved ones laid to rest at many of our cemeteries, and we thank you. I am a counselor at I'm a counselor for the company, and I've been there with them for 4 years. And one of the things I like to tell people is you have options. So, I'm a big fan of social media, and I saw a little post that said something, and I felt like I should, give you your options. So the little post I saw said, you despise the church until you need somewhere to have a funeral. Take your casket to brunch. So I thought that was kind of funny because, again, I get it. I completely understand both sides. But, me being a devil's advocate and your advocate, I want to give you your options in the event that if you have a loved one and you cannot have a service at church, know that, or l'église, you know that you have options. And let me tell you what your options are if you cannot have a funeral in l'église Pau. So, the first, number one place that you can have your funeral for your loved one is at a funeral home. There are lots, whether you go with us, Caballero Rivero, or somebody else, many of the funeral homes have chapels, and some of them have more than one that can hold, that can accommodate your family and your friends and have multiple services at the same time. At Caballero Rivero, we typically have about 2 or 3 funeral homes, chapels for you and your guests. in the time of need, and you can pre-plan them. You don't have to wait till the last minute just in case something might happen. Maybe, your church might move to another city, or maybe the pastor, God forbid, may pass away and the church is disbanded. You can pre-plan and have a place to do your funeral, and you can do it at the funeral home since we have the space. The next thing that I'm seeing that's very popular in the community is people are starting to do their funerals at community centers. Community centers, what do I mean by that? There's a very nice community service on 183rd and 12th Ave. It's a senior center that have big rooms and multiple rooms, and it's very state-of-the-art. So what people are doing now is they're being economically savvy by, instead of having it at a church, they'll do it at a community center because they know that they could rent out chairs, they can decorate the place to look like a church, and then it can hold more people. So that's another option that you have if you can't find a church to to do your funeral. The next thing is, a lot of people are not big on burials at cemeteries anymore. Gen moun ki vle, boule. People who want to be cremated. And now there are crematories that have chapels that you could do the service right there, right then and there with the person there, and right afterwards, boule your famille. So right afterwards, they'll do the cremation. You can have a nice, respectful, neutral funeral, and then right after they will go ahead and cremate your loved one. And then when the ashes are ready, you will pick them up, and then you can either scatter them or you could put them in a niche. And if you need some ideas for that, Oumet Relem at 786-253-0211. You can call me at 786-253-0211 if you want to know what to do with your ashes. The next one is, there's other venues that you can do too. What I've noticed with people who are very prominent in the community, entrepreneurs, politicians, presarios in our community, they have their services in theaters. There was a young guy, very big in the young community in the nightlife, and he unfortunately passed away, and they had the service right there at the Julius Littman Theater in North Miami Beach. The family had a chance to memorialize him by posting banners, like huge banners of pictures of, their brother, their son, and they got to design the theater how they wanted to, and they filled the stage with white flowers, and it was absolutely gorgeous. So again, if your church is not willing to let you do the service there, you have an option of doing it at theaters. You can do it at event spaces. Event spaces are great too, especially because it's a blank canvas. And nowadays, young folks are putting more artistry in homegoing celebrations with flowers, balloons, pictures. They're making the space look like an art gallery to really celebrate that person's life. So you have plenty of options. Again, theaters, event spaces, even private clubs. If the person is someone who like to go to the club, the discotheque, and have a good time, you could rent out the space rent it out for a couple of hours for just your family and your guests to memorialize that person. You have options. Call me, 786-253-0211. Another place that you could do your service is at a cemetery. Au café no cimetière. You call that graveside service. You are under a tent. It's short and sweet, about 45 minutes. You can have your pastor or priest come and say a few words. You read a Bible verse, you sing a song, and that's it. No frills, no thrills. You just go ahead and from ashes to ashes, dust to dust. They're right at the cemetery. Afterwards, you guys can go to a reception. Maybe if you guys want to do a ball for the person, go for it. But cemetery is an option right there too. You also can do it at a hospice facility. Let's say the person was living here and they didn't have any families. There are many hospices that offer chapels and chapel services. So once a person passes away, they'll go ahead and bathe them. You have one last service, and then you just go straight to the funeral home so they could go ahead and either lay that person to rest or if they want to go ahead and do a cremation. And one of the last things I wanted to say that you can do a church, you could do a funeral. If you can't do it at your church, there are other churches that are willing to let you do your service at a fee, of course. But some of these churches that are here in Miami-Dade and Broward County are absolutely beautiful and stunning, and a lot of them do come with a reception hall. So if I were you, if you're doing your pre-need arrangements, which I can help you with, you can call me at 786-253-0211. I can help you put aside the money that's needed just to reserve, a space at any of these churches when the time comes. You have options. You're not limited to just one place. Again, you could do your service at a funeral home, at any of the funeral homes that we have. We have multiple chapels that we can do at least 3 services at the same time. You could do it at a community center where the space is versatile. So that means you could decorate it however you like. You could set it up to your satisfaction. You're not limited to the setup of the church. Also, you could do it at a crematory where they also have chapels, and right afterwards your loved one can be cremated, and you shouldn't wait too long afterwards to get the ashes. If you need more information about that, you can give me a call. You can also, again, do the service at a theater, just like the Julius Littman Theater or any theater that's accommodating for your guests. You can also do it at event spaces like banquet halls that are completely blank, where you could set it up to your satisfaction with banners, pictures, balloon displays, flower displays. You can do a step and repeat where people could take photographs. You could do even a red carpet for to memorialize that person if they were someone that was very big in the community. Again, you could do your services at a cemetery, which is called a graveside service. It doesn't take as long. It's fast, and it's right there, and it's actually very cost effective. You can also do it at a hospice, where they spent the remaining parts of their life. Maybe they have gotten close to the nurses and the staff. And last but not least, you can have it at other churches that will just pay you a fee. So thank you for listening to Chat with Kat. I'm Kathleen Barreau, your host. If you'd like to reach me, call me at 786-253-0211. If you'd like to follow me on social media, you can find me on Instagram, The Transition Concierge, and CatBar80 on TikTok. So again, I'm Kathleen Barreau. I was your host, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
Perdre la raison, marcher, chercher notre chimère, obligé,